Hello, and welcome to The Good Glass. Raise a glass. Come on in. Everything is fine.
Oh, thanks.
You, Hunter Danson, are on The Good Podcast, where we raise a glass to the stories and storytellers that shape us.
Oh, that's good.
No ratings or stars or anything like that.
Oh, that's very good. I think that would give me a stomachache.
But there are points.
Points? Like for the stories?
No. For you. For example, if you make an insightful comment, you get plus 5 points. If that comment is about the Buffalo Bills, it is doubled. And then you add a few more. But if you ramble on, as you so often do, and bring us away off track without answering any of my original questions, which I always do, then, well, that's minus points. Like, maybe 500.
That doesn't seem fair.
Of course it is. You're on The Good Podcast.
Oh, fork.
Hello, and welcome to Raise a Glass. My name is Eric Lintela.
You know who I am.
And this is the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. If that opening dialogue made no sense to you whatsoever, then you are in for a treat today, as we are going to be talking about The Good Place. And I will remind everybody that this is a spoiler-filled podcast. And there is some pretty big spoilers in The Good Place. So if you are very interested in watching it and haven't seen it in the multiple years since it came out, probably worth watching at least the first season prior to listening to this podcast.
Yeah, the first season is really, it's kind of like The Sixth Sense. You can really spoil it.
It is so unique. But we are getting into that a little bit later. First, Hunter, I have to know, what is in your glass?
Well, I have a very medium place drink because I have ginger beer that I made myself. But I think I didn't put enough yeast in, so it didn't really get fizzy. So it's kind of like sweet ginger syrup and water. But it is very gingery and it's spicy. It tastes like ginger beer. It's just like flat ginger beer, which is why it's medium place. But in order to try and get it into the good place, I put a little bourbon in it. And it actually goes pretty well. So ginger beer and bourbon. How about you, Eric?
I have a Saranac Honey Pilsner, which is a Pilsner brewed with honey. Not as good as Blueberry Owl, but still pretty good. I think it might go well with blueberries. With some Blueberry Owl. I learned recently that there are some places that add beer to milkshakes.
Like a beer shake? Beer
milkshake? Yes. I don't know how one does that well, but this could be a good base for one, I think.
Yeah, I think it depends on the beer. Like a milk stout would probably work.
It's a little on the nose, Hunter.
I don't know.
Hunter, what are you raising a glass and pouring one out for this week?
I'm raising a glass to a guy named Sam Fadala, who wrote a book called Traditional Archery. I just was browsing in the library. I was like, I like traditional archery. I'll check that out.
Something that so many people are thinking.
And
let me go to the archery section of the library.
It was just the nonfiction.
The traditional archery section of the library.
Yeah, but it was good. I hadn't picked up my bow in a while. I have it's kind of like a short bow, like a recurve. I like traditional archery. I like shooting without sights. Or using a stick bow. And it was just nice to get out and shoot arrows again. And reading it, he's a little bit quirky, but it's good enough, and had a lot of helpful stuff in it. And inspired me to try going back to instinctive shooting, because I was using the tip of the arrow as a sight. Because traditional bows, I guess newer ones, you can put sights on them, but usually you don't, because it's a traditional stick bow. But there is a system you can use where you aim with the point of the arrow at the target, and there's specific things that you do. But this inspired me to go back to just shooting instinctive and practicing a lot and having fun shooting. So, Sam Fadala, thank you. And I am pouring one out for inflation, which I guess most adults in America, I guess, feel eventually. I always wondered, like, my parents would see a price and they'd be like, "Oh, that's way too much for that." And now I am doing the same thing. And it just sucks.
Those Aldi bills keep going up.
I know. Yeah. Just like groceries. It's just like, why am I paying more for the things that I was buying before? Same things. I'm buying less now and I'm paying more. I don't understand. Yeah. How about you?
I'm trying to think about something I'm raising a glass to that I haven't raised one to before on the podcast. I am raising a glass today to just the generosity of family members. Got to spend time with two of my aunts who are watching my son today for the second half of the day, and just had so much fun walking with them through the garden and talking with them. And it really does take a village to raise a child. And it's just fun being with them. And I've got such close friends that are practically family, as well as other family that have been helping me in my yard, and seen some incredibly marked improvements back there, and that's always win. And I am pouring one out, like hardcore pouring one out, maybe two, for flooding basements. So a couple weeks ago, there was some rain, and basement flooded. So I got up my shop vac, took out the dry filter, and was filling it up and pouring it out, and received the great recommendation of, like, hey, like, maybe there's something wrong with the pump, or not the pump, the line going down to the sewer, whatever it is. I don't know. Like, why don't you, like, try to suck the water out there? And so I was like, that's a good idea. Started sucking the water out there, and somehow the cap to the sewer popped out. And my and I didn't realize for a few minutes. I was dumping out one of the things of one of the
shirt. Full of shirt?
Yes, full of shirt. Went from 1 to 2. And so that became a 3 or 4 hour project. So now we're having somebody come and check out our basement and how to make sure it's more watertight. So, yay.
Yay.
And there we go. Let's go on to the show. Maybe we should have like little music right here. So, Hunter, today we are going to be talking about The Good Place. It has been a little bit of time, I'll admit, since I have watched the full show. But I do very well remember the first season of this show. So I'd love to go into a quick summary of it. And then you can go through seasons 2 and 3, and I can finish with season 4 as we dive into our thoughts and even more so how it has shaped us.
And just give a spoiler warning one more time before we spoil everything for season 1. Turn off our podcast or listen to a different one.
Listen to a different one.
Yeah.
Or say, we don't care about The Good Place. And
yeah, I mean, it still would be probably good watching. I mean, it's still funny and really interesting.
It's a very funny show.
Yeah. And again, so this is your final warning.
So The Good Place begins with Eleanor waking up and seeing a sign that says everything is fine in an office. She is then welcomed into the inner sanctuary of the office by a man named Michael, played by none other than Ted Danson, where she is told that she has entered The Good Place. The Good Place is one of 2 options for where you can go when you die. The other is The Bad Place until season 2, where there's a third option. You enter the good place by doing enough good things in your life that you cross a certain point threshold, where then for eternity you are in the good place. If you did not make it to that point threshold, you end up in the bad place, where you are tormented for eternity. As a member of the good place, you are given a house to live in. You are given amazing opportunities and pretty much anything you want to at your fingertips by none other than Janet, who is a robot of sorts, who
not a robot,
who will make anything happen for you. And you are given a soulmate who you will be with for the rest of eternity. Eleanor enters into her house, which is also provided for her, which she hates because it's made like a clown, and then meets her soulmate, Chidi. As it goes on, she meets multiple other people, the primary couple of whom are Tahini and a monk.
Tahani, yeah.
I said I wasn't going to make that mistake. I just made hummus. And so I was using tahini, and this is going to happen multiple times. I've used tahini like 3 times in my life, and one of them just happens to be before we talk about tahani. Over the course of the first season, in building this relationship with Tahani and her soulmate, dang it,
Gianu.
Gianu, yes.
Yes, at first.
She realizes, and then all 4 of them, Chidi, Eleanor, Tahani, and Jason, realize that they are in the wrong place. And the big reveal is at the end of the season, where while they thought they were in the good place, Eleanor decides and realizes and calls Michael out saying, "This is the bad place."
He
has such a good turn. Michael's turn is really good.
Oh, yeah.
That was a rough summary of the first season. Hunter, take it away. Season 2.
Well, since Eleanor figures it out, Michael decides to try again. He reboots them, and he erases their memories. And at first, there's like a head bad place guy who has been playing a different part. Like all of the demons all of the people in the neighborhood are actually demons. Like there's a bunch of other people in the neighborhood playing parts, and the only actual humans in the neighborhood are Eleanor, Chidi, Jason, and Tahani. And they're all being tortured by these demons who are playing humans. And so Michael gets the go ahead from Sean to reboot them and try again. And Eleanor figures it out pretty quickly. She like writes a note to herself and sticks it in Janet's mouth. It's because Janet doesn't eat. She's not a robot and she's not a girl. She's a depository of all knowledge in the universe and much more than that too. Like you can ask Janet for anything. Like, hey Janet, can I have actually good, fizzy ginger beer? And she'll show up, pop out of nowhere,
Sure.
and give you some good ginger beer. Yeah. So, in season 2, they reboot them, and like by the second episode, like Michael has tried like 300 times, and they all figure it out. One time, Jason figures it out.
Jason is an idiot.
Yeah, Jason. So Gianu, who you think is a monk, is Tahani's soulmate, and he has taken a vow of silence, which is torturing Tahani. The sort of premise for this is based on the quote "Hell is other people" by Jean-Paul Sartre, but he's actually
Jason Mendoza.
Jason Mendoza from Jacksonville, Florida, and he died.
No, we can't get. That's season 3.
Sorry,
season 2.
Yeah, but he's not the brightest, and he figures it out. And Michael is like, Jason figured it out. Oh, this one hurts. And so what happens is Michael ends up having to team up with the humans because one of the other demons named Vicky, who's kind of a showboat, she thinks he's like a really good actor. She plays Eleanor's. She plays the actual Eleanor that is supposed to be in the good place, because it's very clear from the beginning that Eleanor is not supposed to be there. Like Michael shows Eleanor memories that aren't hers, so Eleanor from the beginning knows that she is an imposter, and that's sort of part of her torture, and having to learn ethics from Chidi and everything. But so Vicky wants to. She tells Michael, because Michael wasn't supposed to reboot them again a second time. He wasn't supposed to reboot them a third time, and he's done it like 300 times. She's like, I'm going to go tell Sean, that you've been rebooting it. This isn't working, because this is like a whole new way to torture humans that Michael has dreamed up.
It's like
they've just been using, wasps with mouths that, like, I forget even like they come up with all these really silly things to torture humans, like butt spiders or spider diapers and
all the things.
Yes, all the weird things. I watched the little web series, and Sean at the end, he's like, hold on, I have to go make Emily Dickinson listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. It's like, that's creative, but it's not as creative as Michael's plan to make these 4 people torture each other while they think that they're in the good place. And so Michael ends up teaming up with them, because if he gets found out, he's going to get retired, which his essence will be split up and burned on the surface of a million suns for eternity. So he doesn't want that to happen to him.
A lot of creativity in this show.
Yeah, and so they end up going to the bad place and trying to like get to the good place, because they sort of start to realize that the system by which people are judged is wrong. Like, and Michael ends up being on the side of the humans and like forming relationships with them. He goes through an existential crisis. That's like the first big step for him, is realizing that he's going to die because he's an immortal demon. And he does a bunch of weird stuff. He acts like a middle-aged old man. Gets a Ferrari and does a bunch of weird things, has like an existential crisis, and like he's sort of on their side by the end of season 2, and they're trying to get to the judge, the actual judge, to say like, hey, this system is kind of messed up because you know, the whole points system is it's you know, they calculate a point number based on every action that you do. So like one of the joke ones in the intro video, and I just have it playing in front of me right now, so I refreshed my memory, but one of the like plus 99,000 points was not talking about veganism unprompted. Which is just a joke one, but like, or there's like ending slavery, which is like plus, you know, 100 million points or whatever. But then like, you know, they get into it a little bit more where like, okay, you go to buy your mother roses, but those roses were grown with chemicals that harm the environment and all these other factors that bring what would have been a positive action, they bring it negative to a negative score. So at the end of season 2, they actually end up proving to the judge that the system is wrong, because there's a lot of other antics and stuff, but the judge ends up going to Earth to see what it's like, and then she comes back and she's like, "Oh, it's awful. Earth is awful. You guys have really everywhere is just awful in a different way." And so they basically end up doing an experiment where they say, okay, these 4 people were pretty bad when they got here: Eleanor, Chidi, Tahani, and Jason. And they all have their own flaws. Like Eleanor is just really bad. She was really selfish on Earth.
Super selfish and mean and like a loner, and pushed away everyone. And her day job was like selling fake medicine over the phone. And she was the best salesman, like 6 years running. Jason had no impulse control. Like petty criminal.
His default reaction to things like predicaments is to throw a Molotov cocktail. And it becomes a gag, like how fast he can put together a Molotov cocktail. Tahani was obsessed with what everyone thought of her. She was super rich. Her family was super rich. But she was always jealous of her sister.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You actually start feeling quite bad for Tahani when they sort of reveal more of her backstory. And Chidi's fatal flaw is that he could never make a decision.
Never. He was a terrible friend because he could never make a decision. And those all work into the way they die. So Eleanor was played by Kristen Bell. Is just a jerk all the time and is like exactly what we said. She gets run over by a group of runaway shopping carts.
She drops a Lonely Girl margarita mix and gets hit by a bunch of shopping carts. And then she's like, "Oh, so that's how I died." And then Mike was like, "Well, actually, you were able to hold on to the shopping carts, and then you went into the road, and a truck advertising erectile dysfunction pills actually killed you. And then your ex-boyfriend the EMT on the scene was actually your ex-boyfriend." She's like, "Okay, yeah, I get it."
Chidi died because he couldn't make a decision about what to do for his friend's bachelor party, which his friend knew he couldn't, gave him a test run. And while he's unable to make a decision, an air conditioning unit falls out of a building onto his head and kills him. Tahani dies by attacking a statue of her sister, right? And the statue falls down on her. And then Jason dies because they're trying to do like an Ocean's 11 type heist where
Like robbing a pizza joint.
Yeah, but he was brought into the building inside of an airtight safe,
Yeah.
and his friend didn't know the combination to open it, which is a terrible way to die, but also really funny because he was wearing a fake mustache.
And Jason brought a snorkel into the safe, thinking that he could breathe through the snorkel.
Oh my goodness. And so season 3 is them living on, like, trying it again on Earth to test their hypothesis about whether or not people can get better. And they're forced to forget everything about the good place. And they're like, there's a constant stream of Michael and Janet looking at their numbers and the judge and like, have they've improved? Have they not? And the judge, and there's a specific amount of time in which case then the decision will be made. And they're not improving until they're found a way for them to all interact together.
Oh yeah.
And as soon as that happens, their numbers start going up relatively positive. But there's a question of whether it was enough.
Yeah.
And that relatively accurately brings us to season 4, which is primarily focused on entering the good place. And then they enter the good place and find out that all of the good demons, the angels things, like have given up, and all the people that are in the good place, which is not that many people, are just like tired and want it to be done. And so then Michael and Chidi and Eleanor and Tahani and Jason end up having to devise a system for which to change the good place and the bad place rules, and to like revitalize the good place. And what they land on is that everybody, it's actually relatively similar. But when you die, you will either enter the good place or you will enter like a test simulator that you will keep going through and going through and going through until you like have improved in the various areas of your life where you are noticeably bad. And once you've improved to a certain space, you then enter the good place. Like once you realize that racism is wrong, if that was your only fault, you would then enter the good place.
Right. Yeah, I think they give you like a class, like an ethics class, and then they let you learn. They put you in a testing environment, and give you like a big test that tests your, fatal flaw. And if you pass, you can go to the good place. I think it's season 2 is when they go to Earth.
Oh, okay.
And then season 3, they do an experiment where they have 4 people.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that.
Come to a neighborhood, and Eleanor ends up running the neighborhood. Eleanor ends up playing like the Michael. And they're trying to see if these 4 people will get better in the same situation that the 4 of them were in.
And then once you've entered the good place, you can decide if you want to leave the good place by way of entering into a space where your essence is dissolved into the rest of creation, which many of the individuals, in fact, everybody, except Tahani, ends up deciding to do at some point. Because at some point there's no longer anything left to. They're full and they don't need anything else. And the irony of the show is by the end of it, Eleanor is completely very selfless and other-centric and incredibly kind. Chidi can make decisions. Tahani loves people and does not care about who she is, and her own like a sense of accomplishment in that sense. And Jason has actually practiced time as a monk for possibly years. And
Possibly
Michael,
1,000 years.
1,000. And Michael ends up as a human living out life on Earth because that's what he wants to try.
Yeah. Whew.
And that's the way it shaped us. We just talked so long. That was so long, Hunter.
I mean, we summarized 4 seasons.
Yeah,
there's a lot that happens.
Mm-hmm. So, Hunter, I'm thinking about how it shaped me. This whole show is directed. The showrunner is Michael Shur, who I know most well from Parks and Recreation, which is maybe still my favorite show
of all time.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
Well, at least favorite comedy. I love New Girl though. The Pawnee Harvest Festival with Little Sebastian is like, we could probably do an entire episode on that. I think that's one of the best episodes of that show. I think it's even in season 2 or season 3. Anyways, so Michael Schur's idea, especially for the first season of the show, was just spectacular. I was just completely caught off guard watching with my wife that it was The Bad Place. And I remember just spending a lot of time. One of the things I love about good shows and funny shows is they can just like bring you into the universe and just kind of leave you there. Mm-hmm. And then just make you laugh. And then the right turn or the reveal when it's actually The Bad Place, just like, what? And then we're left for like a year, because we were actually watching that part, I think, when it came out, asking the question, so what are they going to do next? I really hope they don't just redo the whole thing in season 2. And then the season 2, in the first episode, they redid everything up to them finding out, and it was hilarious. Like, oh yeah, they did the entirety of what we thought season 2 would be in the first episode and a half. And so it was just continually creative, and a show that just made us just have a lot of fun. And then as time goes on, and this is not going to be a surprise to listeners out there who've paid attention or heard a few of our episodes at least, there's a lot of conversation about life and death and theology and philosophy, and those are things that I find very interesting. Not interesting academically in the sense of like, I'm not going to go through more of the 4 or 5 syllable words and kind of walk through, the train scenario and all these different, or the trolley scenario and all these different things.
Utilitarianism and contractualism.
Yeah, I don't really care about that stuff. But I care for the way it like impacts practice. And I know that those things really do. And so that's why I think that the academic aspect of things is important. But it's just a lot of really good questions that it brings up. And so, like, one of the characters in this show who you meet on the first episode, but don't actually ever meet in person until season 2 or season 3 is, what's his name? Jake something? There's a random dude.
Is it Doug Forsett?
Doug Forsett. It's Doug Forsett. There's a random guy, Doug, who in one fit of craziness,
smoking some shrooms.
Yeah, planned out or like theorized everything, like 97% of what was true about the point system for The Good Place and The Bad Place. And so they go and meet him at one point, and he's like trying to like point rig, or what's there's a better wording for that in gaming.
He's just trying to grab points.
Yeah. And so like he accidentally runs over a snail. And so he goes and like has a cemetery, like a burial service for the snail, and like is entirely living this life for the next life. And it asks this question, like what does it look like if that were to be you, to live your entire life now for the future?
He just eats lentils and radishes, and he drinks his own pee. Because he doesn't want to pollute the environment, so or use too much or use power or anything. So he lives off the grid, and he filters his urine, and that's the drinking water that he drinks, so he can have zero carbon footprint.
And he still doesn't make it.
Yeah, he still doesn't make it.
But it asked a lot of deep theological questions in a way that made them appropriate to culture. And it does it in a way that doesn't say this is the answer, even though it does lean on philosophy as the answer, which I think is, I have thoughts on. And it's a show my wife and I will come back to. We had so much fun in it. Like a lot of shows, well, maybe not. The first season of it was so good, and then it dipped down a little bit, and then the fourth season was also really good. In my experience of it, it was funny throughout, but really enjoyed the first season.
Yeah, it's definitely a really unique experience. I mean, you've heard me say before, I don't really care that much about spoilers, but I'm really glad that I got to experience the first season without spoilers, because it gives you time to kind of soak in the idea and to question it and try and figure out what's going on, because something is wrong from the beginning, because Eleanor is not supposed to be there. So it's sort of like, okay, this is the good place, but what is going on in the universe that it could make a mistake? Which is really just fascinating, really interesting, philosophical question. And but it's also really funny. There's so much
funny.
Comedic potential too.
It's such a funny show. And it's funny from the beginning. I made a joke at the beginning about being a Bills fan, right? But one of the things that gives you a lot of positive points is rooting for the Cleveland Browns. That's really funny. Right? It's hilarious.
Sorry. Yeah. One of the things that gives you a lot of negative points is having a personalized license plate.
Vanity plate. Yeah. It's clear to us that there's that we both really enjoyed the show and had a lot of fun with it. Are there other ways that it's shaped you?
I've watched it just recently. Kim and I watched it over the past, I guess, 2 months or so. And our TV watching schedule, because we have kids, is we watch when we can. So we'll watch a bunch of episodes when we have the time to, because you don't really have a regular time. It's kind of hard, but it's
Negative 40.57 points for overstating a personal connection to a tragedy that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. But I feel like it's so fresh for me. It is connected to a lot of different things that I have been thinking about lately. Like heaven. I read a book called The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard, recommended to me by a friend. And at the end, he sort of gives this vision of heaven, of a place that, is not just endless. It's not just a place where you can just get whatever you want, because that's in the good place. That's what the good place is. It's like you call Janet and she gives you whatever you want. You don't have to work for anything. You don't have to do anything. And then the people in the good place, their brains turn to mush because they are just constantly experiencing all of the pleasure and joy and everything they want. They're just constantly on dopamine highs, and that just kind of, melts their brain after, 1,000 years or so. And so like Dallas Willard, he presents this vision as like, in heaven, it's not just going to be all the things that you did on earth, all the things that you cared about or the things that you practiced are not just going to be irrelevant. Like heaven can be a place where your truest self is fulfilled. And it's, he can't give too much detail because he's going on the Bible, and the Bible doesn't give, I mean, you might be able to help me on here, but it's not like super detailed about heaven. Nope. But like, if we are becoming, sons and daughters of God, then we are, I don't think Jesus is just sitting up in heaven, just hanging out, like Jesus is doing things. God is creative. He's constantly doing things. And so, I've been thinking about this thought for a long time after I read the book. Like, what if the best book that I write, I don't write on earth, I write it in heaven. Or, I write it in eternity or afterwards. And it's just a really, The Good Place really thinks about that, about what existing for eternity in a paradise would be like, or what it would do to you. Would it actually be paradise? Because all the angels, quote unquote angels, running the good place resign immediately and give all authority to Michael when he gets there, because they don't know what to do. Because everyone there are just like happy zombies. And so thinking about that, and, the point system got me thinking a lot too. Like I was thinking of like certain things that I was doing, like, would this get, how many points would this give me? Is this a negative or a positive action? It's that, so it kind of shaped my daily life in that way too. And I just really like the characters. I like all of them. I think if I had to pick one that I relate to the most, it's Chidi.
What?
Big surprise. Because Chidi, Chidi's just the real heart of the show for me.
Chidi's amazing. If Chidi wasn't there, the show wouldn't be enjoyable. Also, I mean, it's true to say about any of the characters, but I think I agree with Chidi. I agree with you about Chidi.
Yeah, because they're like, Chidi was a professor of ethics. He spent his entire life writing a 3,600-page thesis about morality and ethics that he never finishes. And there's kind of a funny scene where like Michael comes to Chidi and he's like, Chidi, I tried to read your thesis, and I am an immortal being. I can read 1,000 pages in 1 second, and I couldn't finish your thesis. Because Chidi, he wants to find the right answer to everything. When he was a kid, his parents were having some trouble, I guess. And so he gave them a hour-long presentation about why they should not get divorced, why they should stay together, as like an 8-year-old. It's a really cute scene. But he does that throughout his life, where he'll spend like 30 minutes trying to choose what kind of flavor muffin he wants, or like an hour just choosing, a blueberry muffin or a chocolate chip muffin. Like, were these blueberries picked in a fair and organic way? Were they grown organically? Was it good for the environment? Were the workers treated well who picked these blueberries? Whereas with the chocolate chip muffin, it's like, what about the chocolate? Where does that come from? With the cocoa beans that were used in the chocolate. Like, should I just not have a muffin? Or it's like he can't make decisions because it's so hard to make good decisions. And I relate to that very much. I want to be right all the time. And I just, it's not possible. I can't be. There are factors that are in my control and factors that aren't. But
I don't know who I'm most like in the show. I'm really not sure. I definitely see some Jason qualities to me. Responding kind of rashly, quickly. But also some Tahani ones. Loving the pomp and circumstance and wanting the affirmation.
Yeah, definitely also caring what people think. I relate to that.
Sometimes we kind of dive deep in the show, in this podcast, about how things have shaped us, and we feel like there needs to be a good answer to it. Maybe somewhat related to what Hunter just said about relating to Chidi. Sometimes a show or a story just shapes you because you remember it and you enjoyed it and you want to go back to it and encourage others to listen to it, to watch it, to read it, to interact with it, to look at it, to whatever it might be. And because you want to have a shared experience. And one of the fun things about this podcast is we invite each other into shared experiences. And as we've progressed in the podcast, there have been probably less and less shared experiences that we naturally have and more that we're inviting each other into. But this is one where we both naturally have. Like we both really enjoyed The Good Place and wanted to talk about it together.
Yeah.
And so that seems a little bit more rare nowadays. Not that we both don't enjoy a thing, but more that we both like naturally came upon it.
There's just so many things.
There's so many things.
So many books, so many shows, like so many different streaming services, like
so many stories and storytellers.
That's right.
And Michael Shur is probably one of the best in comedy right now. I don't know what he's been working on recently. I'm sure other people do, but we could talk about so many different things from the show.
Reboot the earth. Reboot the earth. That's what the judge sings, because she ends up wanting to reboot the earth once they find out that everything is bad on Earth. She's like, okay, we'll just start over. And they're like, wait, they're really happy because they won the case. And then they're like, wait, what are you trying to do? And she's gonna reboot the Earth. And so Janet steals the reboot button, puts it in her void, because Janet has a void inside of her because she's not a robot. And there's a bunch of different Janets. Like there's a good place Janet and there's a bad place Janet. The bad place Janet, when you ask her for things, she shows up. She's like dressed in leather and she's just on her phone all the time.
She makes a lot of fart noises.
Yeah, but there's a disco Janet. And the judge goes into the disco Janet, and the judge is like dancing to that song, the Ring My Bell song. Ring my bell, ring my bell. And so then she starts singing, reboot the earth, reboot the earth. I really like Janet. Like the actor who played Janet was so talented. Like there's an episode where, do you remember she hides them in her void at one point because they're sort of like fugitives, and when they're in the void, they all look like Janet. So it's this one actor playing all four of the other characters, and she has so much range, and like they're wearing like this very similar. Well, no, I think they might have different clothes. they do have different clothes to differentiate them, but she does such a good job of affecting all four of the characters. And there's so many different kinds of Janets and stuff. And
Andrew, there's one of the things I really enjoy doing, and I did that at least with the first season. My wife and I did, is watching something when it comes out.
Mm.
And I feel this more with movies and with books, but with movies, going to the opening showing. Like, there is something about going to the opening showing of a movie that to me just fills me with joy. Like, that is the only time you'll be in a theater full of people you don't know who are as excited about the thing as you are. Like, I can remember where I was when, I can remember the theaters at multiple movies, The Lion, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, many of the Marvel movies, including Black Panther and Endgame, and Dune, one of the ones more recently, when the theater just erupted, like, at various points. It just full joy, full excitement and celebration. Or watching one of my favorite books being made into a TV show with some friends the night it came out, like the first 3 episodes. And there's book series I'm reading right now, or books I'm reading right now that I'm reading when, like, as soon as they come out, I've been buying them and I've been reading them along with 100,000 other people, many of whom I don't know. I'm just getting excited about that. And that's what we did with The Good Place. Again, at least the first season of it. And then with the other ones, I think we watched them more on Netflix than when they came out on, I think, NBC or whatever it was. But it was so much fun kind of interacting with this without any spoilers, but also in a way that kind of put us in like a small group, like in insiders who had seen and remembered The Good Place. And I think it had a little bit less staying power than I had expected it, as far as, like, I haven't heard a lot of things about The Good Place recently outside of what we've talked about. But it was a very unique TV show. And this is one of the things I really like about the show. It knew when it should end. There's a lot of shows that just kind of keep going because they keep making money, but not because they have more show to tell or more story. And this is a story that was like, no, we need to be done after 4 seasons. Like, there shouldn't be a 5th season.
Yeah.
And I think that's something really special to that. Creating something with the knowledge that it's a finite thing, and leaning into that and celebrating that. And that is also much of the focus of The Good Place. That life is a finite thing, which is what prompts the question of what happens after.
Yeah, it's season 4 basically asks the question, like, what gives life meaning, I guess? And their answer is the end. Which I'm not sure I disagree with. I guess it's just, I don't think that the show could have done it in a better way. Like, there isn't a better answer outside of
finite brains cannot imagine the infinite. And one of one of the most incredible things about our faith, and that we believe in not an afterlife, but an everlasting life, is that is decided and built by an infinite, the infinite in God. And it is what makes the understanding and the comprehension of heaven so faulty. And The Bible talks that you're going to have bodies in heaven. And yet our culture talks about heaven as being angels, and you're going to float around and be corporeal or non-corporeal. And the good place gave us bodies. Right? And I don't think our bodies will look exactly like we looked like on earth. And I think the Bible talks about that. But we'll be distinguishable. And so much of the conversation around heaven that, and you've talked about this already, that I think I've heard as well in my life is like, yeah, but is that actually interesting? Do I want to be there? Like, if there's going to be a bunch of people sitting around in a circle saying God, like, is that interesting? And part of that is us not understanding worship. Part of it's not us being finite and not understanding the infinite, yet being invited into the infinite, the unconditional.
I mean, I think we are. Yes, I agree. The one quibble I have is that I think that we are, like, we have a sense that we are eternal.
Mm-hmm.
That, regardless of our fate, I think most of us feel like we have something that is going to last. That's like, because that's why we have existential crises. Just thinking about like not existing is scary. And not just scary in like an animal sense, but like scary philosophically. Like most people I know don't want to die. And yet we are also like, I know I'm speaking from a very, from my cultural point of view, which we talk a lot about heaven and hell. Not just in the church, like most people in American culture are familiar with the idea of heaven and hell, and this idea that good people go to heaven or bad people go to hell. But I think I feel like, the Good Place itself as a TV show doesn't really talk about religion. It doesn't really talk about Jesus. It says something at the beginning where he's like, Christianity got about 10% right. Buddhism got about 10% right. Hinduism, another 10%. And, Doug Forsett is the only one who got 97%. But like the Good Place itself has this idea of heaven and hell as the sort of structure, a good place and a bad place. Because I think like stories and story, the like, why do we tell stories? Why do we communicate with each other with complex language about totally abstract ideas? Like, it's because we have, in the Bible, it would be the image of God, the breath of God breathed into us, and that itself is eternal. But then there's the conversation about justification and everything else. And so, yes, we cannot comprehend heaven because we're mortal, obviously. But in the beginning, we weren't going to die. In the beginning, we were in the Garden of Eden.
We were created to be immortal.
Right. And so that is still true, but there's a problem. And, we still have like a sense of eternity. We see like a dim reflection in a mirror, as the Apostle Paul says. But we can't really grasp it. We're very off track. There is one thing about this show that I wanted to say, actually.
Go for it.
That I really loved, which is how dumb evil is. Like how dumb the demons are. Like their best ideas for torturing people are like scorpion diapers. Like what can we do? Like let's turn them inside out. Let's twist people, like all this physical torture and stuff. And Michael is the only one who has had like a novel torture idea for forever. Like, you know, demons have been torturing people for as long as there have been people. Michael's the first one to come up with something that's like actually a new idea, not just another way to inflict physical pain. And it's just, I love Trevor, Adam Scott's character, who he also plays Ben from Parks and Rec. The way he's introduced, he's sort of like the bad place guy coming to get Eleanor because Eleanor reveals that she is actually not supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And he's just like awful in the dumbest ways. Mm-hmm. Like he's the kind of guy who would cut his toenails on an airplane. Or like they're like eating at a really nice, like he's hanging out in the good place for a while because they're sort of negotiating with Michael. And so they're eating a really nice dinner at a really nice good place restaurant. And he's like eating this really fancy fork. And he's like, man, I can't wait to poop this out. Just like all this really dumb stuff. And the demons are just, they're so dumb because evil is dumb.
Plus 300 points.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to Raise a Glass, the show where the points are made up. Everything's made up and the points don't matter. That is a good gem. Also, that was a great sound of that cup. You can hear that.
Oh, thank you. It's medium place ginger beer. You have to shake it as you drink it so that the ginger doesn't settle.
So we didn't talk about the medium place at all. It's probably not worth talking about too much, but the idea is that there is a medium place for the one person in the entirety of humanity who could not be decided whether or not she should be in the good place or the bad place, because she was a bad person, but she created something, I can't remember what it is, that like cured polio or something like that. And so there's so many positive things that impacted because of what she did after she died, though. So like,
right.
So they put her in the medium place where she just does a lot of cocaine.
Yeah, and other stuff.
Mm-hmm. She's definitely not a medium place type character. You're like, yeah, okay. And they end up there while the judge is waiting for the judge to make one of the decisions. Mm-hmm. Or no, they run away on the train to the medium place.
Yeah.
Hunter, do you have any last questions for us?
I do. Okay. If you had to invent your own creative bad place, what would it be?
It's like a Dante Circle of Hell type thing.
Yeah, it's like, if you were Michael designing a scenario for you.
For me specifically.
Yes, for you specifically. Ooh. What sort of scenario would you invent for yourself?
I think there'd be some aspect to mine where I would feel like I was doing really important work that was ultimately never able to be achieved and gave me a migraine every time I started working on it. I think that would keep me there though, because I think that's part of the piece is like I would want to like I would just get a migraine, like splitting migraine. I think that would be a part of it. I'll have to think more. What do you got? What are you thinking?
It would be sort of like a never-ending jukebox of various scenarios focused around skills that I practice. So maybe I would have like a guitar performance. It would be like a pretty important performance for me where I'm playing my own music in front of like a crowd that is not just people that I know. And I would do really well. I would be doing really, really well. And it would get to like a crucial part in the song, like a guitar solo or like a specific point in the solo where there's silence and then you hit a note or something and the note is really clear and high. And that's like the central note of the solo. And I would miss it.
Would you miss it or the string break? Like, are we trying to do a thing where you think it's a good place?
I would miss it.
Okay.
Because they could like just tweak it a little bit so that I felt like I messed it up. It was my fault. And then everyone afterwards wouldn't tell me that it was bad or that I messed up. I could just see it in their faces where they'd just be like, "Oh, you did a great job, Hunter. Good job. That was really something." But I would know. I would know that I messed up, or I would be cooking and I would forget a certain ingredient, or I'd make a catastrophic mistake, like making pizza and forgetting to put it on a nonstick mat or something. So I'd do all the pizza correct. This actually happened to me.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it.
I'd do all the pizza correctly and then, make the dough and everything, and it would be really good tasting, but you couldn't get it off the pan without mangling it. So I'd be like, "Oh yeah, this tastes great," as they're eating pizza with a fork and knife, or just various things like that. I always feel that way when I'm playing Dominion with people sometimes, most of the time, because I talk about Dominion a lot and how much I love it. And it's my favorite board game. And then when I get together with people who have not played Dominion as much as I am and they win, like more than once or twice, it's like, I told them this was my favorite game and I play it a lot. Like, I should be good at this, but I'm not.
Do you mean just people that haven't played the game as much as you, or are you primarily talking about people that are new to the game?
Who haven't played as much as I have, who aren't like fans of Dominion.
Okay.
Because I am kind of a fan of Dominion, but I just don't practice enough to be super good at it. So that would be my sort of bad place, is just the never-ending jukebox of me making specific little mistakes that mess up everything and blaming myself.
I think mine would also involve me saying some stupid things and like not being able to apologize or like take them back. Like having conversations in my head. I'm trying to think about it because it has to be something that's not actually like that I wouldn't realize is a bad place thing. Or like, I don't know, I made jam the other day and it turned into a syrup. Didn't set. That would be a bad place type thing. But the syrup actually turned out really, really good. So it turned into a good place. I was like, oh, I should do this, make this mistake more often. Like minus 500 points to plus 590. So bonus points.
Nice.
Hunter, my brain is just kind of shot. I feel like that's probably pretty clear here. And while I would love to keep talking about this, I don't think there's much more I got.
Okay.
I think my tank's pretty empty.
This, I will say, as an ending way it has shaped me for the future, I have a renewed interest in philosophy. Because I didn't have a great experience in college with philosophy. Nothing against the professor or anything. It was just not the great context for it for me. But I do want to learn more about like Kant and Aristotle and Plato and actually read some primary sources. I want to read the book that I think this whole show was really based on, which was What We Owe to Each Other by T.M. Scanlon, which is about contractualism as a sort of like social contracts as a as a foundation for moral ideas, but as a foundation for like a moral system. And I think going back to what you said about experiencing art together with people, and like, I agree. I think that's one of my favorite things about this podcast is, experiencing new art that I wouldn't seek out before, and connecting with you over it, and also sharing things with you that I absolutely love, that are a big part of me. Because like, stories are personal. They're, for the author, in my opinion, they're a part of the author themselves. They're a part of, people put we put pieces of what we are into everything that we do. And this, like, the four characters in the good place for them becomes the four of them being together.
Yeah.
Like, as long as they're together, they are in the good place. And as long as we are together on this podcast, we are on the good podcast. So thank you.
Just want to read some of my favorite Jason lines from Reddit before we end with one of the deepest dialogues between Jason and Michael. Jason, I'm too young to die and too old to eat off the kids' menu. What a stupid age I am. Anytime I had a problem, I threw a Molotov cocktail. Boom, right away, I had a different problem. You guys should listen to me. I came up with thousands of ideas in my life, and only one of them got me killed. I wasn't a failed DJ. I was pre-successful. Maybe I'll finally get some of those squiggles on my brain. Doctor says my brain's as smooth as an egg. You know, Sean, you used to be cool, but you've changed, man. In Jacksonville, I got a flu virus named after me because I kissed a bat on a dare.
Oh, Jason.
I give great advice. That's why I'm in the good place. She makes the bass drop in my heart.
Oh, Chidi's rap musical. My name is Kierkegaard and my writing is impeccable. Check out my teleological suspension of the ethical. I love Chidi.
Do you want to read Michael or Jason?
Michael. So this is when Michael is trying to convince the judge that Jason, Eleanor, and Chidi and Tahani have become better people. So Michael says, Jason, growing up in Jacksonville, what did you used to do for fun every day after school?
Me and my friends whipped empty spray cans at flamingos.
See? And now he's gotten so much better.
I was already pretty good. When I was 6, I hit one right on the butt. There we go. Reddit is dangerous. Fremulon.